Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today we have Leo Lu, a blockchain executive. On air, Leo Lu, right now. This episode has been brought to you by the Excalibur by Heaven's Pantry. You know, professionals need to be very careful about what they put into their body. I think your professional performance is so dependent on how well you take care of your health. That's why the Excalibur is able to keep people nourished, productive, and energetic with only six natural ingredients. If you're interested in buying the chocolate Excalibur, which both of us highly endorse, scan this QR code right now and type in HP Street 20 for 20% off your first order. Excellent. Well, Leo, thanks a lot for joining our show today. How's your day going so far, my friend?
Thanks for having me. Just wrapping up the day.
S- So, to those who don't know Leo personally, Leo has been a rising star in the fintech world. He's he's a young and ambitious and honestly just really highly competent blockchain executive. So, Leo, tell us a little bit about your role and what you do.
Sure. Right now, I'm the chief of staff for the crypto team at a company called Cross River. Cross River, for those who don't know, is a banking as a service company. So, what we do is we power fintechs. We help them originate loans. So, looking at some buy now, pay later companies like Affirm, we are the ones working on the back end to help them originate their loans. And then on the other end, it's helping fintech companies issue different sorts of products, such as credit cards or bank accounts. And then the last part is payments. So essentially, it's banking, payments, and lending. And then with crypto, which I'll talk about more, we're bringing on new versions of these products.
And to those who don't know, and to those who aren't familiar with what crypto is, can you explain crypto and blockchain to an absolute layperson? Imagine that you were trying to explain to someone who's in grade school what is blockchain, what is crypto, what does it do, and why is it so important?
I'll start off with, so because there's a lot of terminology here, I'll start off with blockchain. Essentially, blockchain is a form of technology that's centered around databases. And it's basically just as it's called, a blockchain. So it's a series of different blocks, one block after another, each block having its own set of information. What makes it a blockchain, let's say for Bitcoin and Ethereum, are a couple of other characteristics on top of that. So one part is distributed and other part is decentralized. What each of those terms means is that something that's distributed, every single participant in a network has a copy of the entire record. So let's say for Bitcoin or Ethereum, anyone can sort of download the entire blockchain itself and then have that record and have that keep going. The second part here, in terms of decentralized, means it's really a matter of control. A centralized system means that there are certain parties who have all of the power and then control the system. By something being decentralized, that means that there is no one entity that has the majority power and that it's essentially democratized. Let's say with Bitcoin or Ethereum, right now they use a algorithm called proof of work, or a system called proof of work that involves different miners solving algorithms to help keep the network secure. So said a lot there, but happy to unpack the different items.
So these miners that we have in the blockchain network, to everyone watching, they're different than the miners you traditionally think of with the pickaxes, chipping away at rocks for the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
That's exactly right. By miners, it's mostly people who use graphics cards to help solve computational problems. And again, the purpose of this mining is to verify transactions and to keep the network secure. And then the reason why people do mining is so that they're expending all this power, this money that goes in that generating that power, in order to gain new crypto that's being mined as a reward. So that's basically the purpose of the mining. Um, and what's really interesting about this and why it's decentralized is that this is a whole incentive system to get people to actually care about this and do the mining. Like no one will do it if they don't get rewarded for it. So this actually keeps it decentralized.
And how do you see the realm of rewards and incentives shaping finance of the future?
I think there's a lot of directions that you can go from here, but maybe to start off, one part about Bitcoin itself is that one view is that Bitcoin can essentially be a new store of value, so akin to digital gold. Let's say looking at monetary policy, governments right now, they can sort of control their currency and they can choose to issue more money. But then the problem with that is that the more money a bank issues, the more devalued the currency then becomes. So it's akin to, let's say, the USA going off of the gold standard in the 1900s. With Bitcoin, that can sort of be attributed to something similar to digital gold, where there is a fixed supply. Like there's a limited supply. We'll eventually get there, but we'll get there, let's say, it'll take some time before the last Bitcoin is mined. It'll take more and more energy as more Bitcoin is mined. But then theoretically, the price of Bitcoin will also increase. So that way, even though miners are getting less portion of Bitcoin when it's being mined, they'll still get good enough reward because the price will go up.
Essentially, this is the law of diminishing returns in play, where you have like a y-axis and an x-axis, with x-axis representing time, and then as time goes up, your increase in reward just goes down logarithmically.
Yeah, that's correct. Let's say maybe something else, going away from mining, and definitely acknowledge that a lot of people have mentioned that mining is something that is energy intensive. So it takes electricity. A lot of people are working on it. They're looking into, let's say, using renewable sources of energy, solar power, water power, and that sort. But let's say if you look at Ethereum, so moving on from Bitcoin, Ethereum currently still involves mining. People are still using graphics cards. But something that's happening soon is Ethereum will switch to something called proof of stake. That's different in that it doesn't involve mining anymore. Proof of stake would involve people putting up their existing Ether holdings and staking it. So they'll lock their Ethereum into a, let's say, smart contract. So basically, they're putting it up and using that to keep the transaction secure. Then they'll be able to get a certain percent essentially as interest, as rewards for keeping their Ethereum locked up and validating. More technically, this is something called running a validator node. This is something that I won't go too much into detail, but that's the new way of keeping the Ethereum network secure. That's a lot more energy efficient and still incentivizes people to perform that act to keep the blockchain running.
By the way, Leo is an absolute wealth of knowledge in this field. It's just crazy how much information he can digest and articulate about about his industry of choice. And I really think that speaks a lot to the dedication, the hard work that went into his whole career. So, Leo, how do you get into blockchain as a career? I'm sure someone with your pedigree and someone with your work experience has plenty of options. Why do you choose crypto at the end of the day?
It's a good question. The short answer is that it's something that I thought was really interesting. And as someone who has always been following the different latest developments, so let's say when the first iPhone came out and when Android was in its early days, it was just really interesting to follow that along. And specifically for crypto, the way I got involved was actually going to crypto events after work and just learning about it. But then after going to those events, I sort of felt like I was left out as someone from the non-technical side. Felt like everyone there were engineers. They were talking about things that even right now I can't really understand. But then I just wanted to get involved. So I helped out this crypto nonprofit organization that hosted different events and work with them on event management. So bringing on speakers for different sessions, helping them partner with different conferences to get the word out there about the organization. And so it was using my sort of business skill set to help out where I could. And then that led to meeting a lot of different people, learning more about the space, and then eventually, while in a previous role, being able to work on that during my full time job. And now, this current transition into what I'm doing right now, I find it really interesting because we're trying to help facilitate more crypto adoption, and we're trying to do that through fintech. So enabling fintech companies to provide crypto access to their end consumers. Let's say current existing examples, ones that are my company hasn't been involved in, but are very out there in the market, are the likes of, let's say, Robinhood adding crypto functionality. Like that was a really big deal. There are already a lot of users on
I think one
Robinhood.
really cool thing about Robinhood is that it just absolutely democratizes the the whole economy, allowing retail investors to enter the market, and crypto at the core of the culture is all about democratization. So I think it's really I think it's really cool how those two sectors kind of got tied together.
That's right. That's really true. And that's a great point because let's say Robinhood, they definitely streamlined the process of purchasing stocks. Let's say even with fractional shares, maybe beforehand people had to buy a full stock. And let's say if a stock was $1,000, then that would cost too much for a lot of people to buy one share. But with Robinhood, you can put in, let's say, even $1 and get access. With crypto, what we're trying to do is
And let's take a pause for a second for those who aren't familiar with the term fractional share. What is a fractional share, Leo? And how does that concept work?
the simple explanation is that a fractional share is just a small amount. It doesn't have to be a whole share. Um, they have ways of setting it up in the back end. So let's say, for example, Robinhood works with a company called Apex Clearing to maintain the records of who owns what. But basically, this means that you don't have to buy a full share of a company. Similar to how when you buy Bitcoin, you don't have to buy a whole Bitcoin. That would cost $20,000 or so right now, down a lot from high of over 60,000. But still, you can spend as little as $1 and buy some Bitcoin.
That's I really like the concept of dividing a particular asset into smaller and smaller pieces, because this is essentially what allows everyday people who are watching this video to enter the markets for a lot of assets. I believe that Berkshire Hathaway also has different classes of stocks. Uh, the the main one is worth, I think, a few $100,000, and they also have class B, class C shares that are worth significantly less. And I think Bitcoin, one thing that it really it really excelled at is just catching traction with the retail investors, allowing ordinary people. I still remember, you know I still remember early on in my career and during my college days, people were talking about, you know, hey, I own my first tenth of a Bitcoin or something like that. Of course, that's when the prices were a lot lower, but I I really think this fractional system allows people who are everyday, everyday Main Street people to enter the markets, and it's really good. Where do you see the future of blockchain impacting retail consumers?
I see it as an expansion of adoption facilitated through fintech companies. And so, what I mean by this is, let's say, fintech companies, they just make it easier for people to access crypto.
Hmm.
Even Acorns, as an example, Acorns is a fintech company that people can use to invest their spare change into assets. That can be stocks or that can be crypto. So basically, if someone were to buy something for, let's say, $19.50, they can just round that up to $20 and then put that 50 cents into something like crypto or into a stock. What that does on the back end is that takes care of different things like custody, which is probably the biggest part with crypto in terms of Acorns, the fintech company, will help you actually hold that asset. For crypto, the thing I do want to bring up is a matter of decentralization and how it applies. In that, technically, if someone were to, let's say, go on an exchange like Coinbase and then buy crypto, they can actually transfer that out into their own crypto wallet. So, let's say, in the off chance that Coinbase were to go bankrupt, you would actually lose your crypto that's being held on the exchange. Hopefully it doesn't happen, but um, even with some things we saw last week in the market, there are things like that are happening. But people can actually own their crypto. This is through owning, let's say, like a wallet. So whether that be a physical device that has a wallet, that's called cold storage, or something that's held online, like you can actually control that crypto yourself. It's really then a matter of a risk versus reward scenario where the downside is if you, let's say, enter the wrong address and you send crypto there, then you can't get that back. So there are some benefits of fintechs being in the middle to facilitate a lot of this and making it easier for the ordinary person to not have to worry about something like dealing with wallets or addresses.
That's a really good use case. But if there's one main thing that the fintech world absolutely needs to solve right now, what would you like to see solved? It can be anything, whether it's retail or institutional.
The one thing, this is not something I think can be solved immediately, and this would require a joint effort, is around regulation. So right now, there's a lot going on in the regulatory space. The U.S. government and governments all over the world have different stances around crypto. So let's say if you look at China, they've banned crypto, and other countries have embraced it. The U.S. is starting to um, do more in terms of regulating crypto. And the purpose is to prevent some of the things that happened, let's say, last week with crypto funds using too much leverage and then putting consumers at risk or different blockchain projects. Let's say there's one example called Terra, and what happened there with a huge blow up. So having clear regulation will be really important in defining the frameworks that fintech companies and crypto companies can operate in. Without that, a lot of things are on hold, a lot of the potential that can be brought. But it's still important to keep the different risks in mind. And so having the right regulation will definitely help with that.
I think one of the most difficult aspects of defining a good regulatory environment and regulatory framework for a policymaker is balancing too much regulation versus too little regulation. And what is the ideal amount of regulation in your opinion? I know that's
That,
a really difficult question to
yeah,
answer, in a few minutes, but just take your best crack at it. I know it's definitely a very nuanced question.
That's right. I think some of the moves that have been made already by the government, they are positive. So one example is looking at stablecoins. This is exactly what happened with Terra, where Terra is a blockchain and they had a stablecoin called UST that was backed by a cryptocurrency. But the problem was that that wasn't like a real asset. Like the asset itself basically went to zero. So the stablecoin, and by stablecoin, I mean something that is supposed to substitute one to one with something else, was basically useless as well. So right now, if you look at it, there's a stablecoin called USDC that's issued by a crypto company called Circle, and it's backed one to one by US dollar. That means one USDC can be redeemable for one US dollar. That's really important because there's no way for the USDC to lose that peg and become worth less than a dollar. So in this case, you actually have the best of both worlds, where the crypto itself can also be programmable, the USDC token. So you can use that with smart contracts. That way, let's say you can automatically execute different obligations, have better transparency, better reporting, but also have something of actual value in being backed by a dollar. So that's just one example of a decision that the regulators have to make. There's a lot more decisions that need to be done. Some of them are not as good, but I think that in general, what's going to be important around this is education. And so it's part of it is up to the fintech and crypto industry to educate the regulators to make sure that they know like what's actually going on for the regulators to make the right decisions.
I think I think you summed it up very well. My personal thoughts on regulation in general is that you need regulation to protect the consumer. There needs to be some sort of social contract and societal trust between a consumer and a particular institution providing services. Uh, when there's enough regulation where the consumer feels confident that they're getting a quality good and they're getting what they sign up to get, and the institution also respects that social contract and gives the customer what they said they promised to deliver. That that's when you have a functioning regulatory system where I think you don't have a functional regulatory system is when the amount of regulation actually slows down the innovation in a particular industry and then prevents further progress from getting done. And over regulation is really just as big of an issue as under regulation as well. I I really do not envy the job of the policymakers who have a really difficult task ahead of them. So Leo, I'm curious. Let's say I was fresh out of college, and I was really interested in blockchain as a career. What advice would you give to people who are looking to get a job in the industry, whether it's for people who are fresh out of school or people who are already seasoned professionals?
I can start off from people who are fresh out of school to then go into people who are more senior, but I think in general, it's it seems kind of similar to other industries. I don't feel like there is as much of a secret here. There are some shortcuts, I'd say, but I think the general path would be it is best to start out working at a larger company. The reason why is because one, like there are roles out there. It's more stable as well, especially in the current times, but it provides you the right training. Like you help the company in terms of performing more analytical work, more research-based work, producing deliverables and that sort. But then you also learn from others and you see how things are done. Once you build more experience, then you can join a smaller company and then have more ownership if you want to rise through the ranks a bit faster. The specific thing about crypto, though, is that there are still opportunities to contribute outside of current established methods. So Maybe less so as what I was doing in helping out the crypto company with events. That's still doable. But let's say contributing to something like a DAO. A DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization, and they usually organize through a chat app called Discord. So by joining the Discord groups of these DAOs and then contributing, let's say seeing what people are posting and then maybe providing what people are asking for, even on your own, like even without asking permission, people will recognize what you're doing, and then you can get more responsibility there unofficially. So that's really one way of showing your interest in the field. Something else is around content creation. So if you're out there and you want to learn about something, then since you're doing it anyways, it could definitely help in terms of, let's say, maybe just tweeting about it, writing a blog post about what you're learning, and just the terms called learning in public. um, you can then show that this is actually something that you're doing. All of this goes back to then having what's essentially a portfolio. It can be a combination of your current work experience, whatever you're doing, even if it's not in Web3, there might be ways to translate that into what you want to do within Web3/crypto, combining that with whatever you're doing on your own time to get yourself ahead. So, plenty of ways to show your interest in the field and get involved without working on it full time yet.
So I feel like this is a field that benefits and encourages people to think outside of the box, break free of the traditional mold, be a hustler, be a go-getter. Does that sound about right?
That's right. One part as well is that community is so important right now. It's a really collaborative space for the most part. People are really open to talking and sharing and also working together. One of the reasons why is mostly because this space is still early right now, and so there's a lot of room left. Um, so there's a lot more room for collaboration rather than competition.
I really like the whole philosophy of collaborate instead of compete. As with local brands, whether it's other health food organizations or even similar people in our product category. Because instead of making instead of trying to cut the biggest piece of pie for yourself, I'm always thinking, how can we make the pie bigger? How can we enable the pie to serve more people in the community so that we're not all clawing for the same piece of pie? We've baked a bigger pie or even multiple pies so that everyone has enough to eat. And I really think for any industry, really think for any industry, I just think collaborating is a way better strategy than competing. And how do you think crypto can better serve society and the community today while we're on the subject of making the pie bigger? How can crypto help underprivileged people and underprivileged groups?
There's a lot there. The main thing that centers around this is called banking the unbanked. And so the analogy I'll draw here is, let's say there's countries where people went directly to their smartphones. Like they skipped using computers, partly because they didn't have any computers there, so they didn't have the resources, but also because um, the smartphones actually gave them the accessibility. It'll also sort of be similar with crypto, where there's people who might not have bank accounts. Um, they definitely don't have credit cards then, but then they'll eventually be able to have more financial access through crypto. One thing around here is, let's say, payments. So crypto is essentially a 24/7 global payment system. Bitcoin and Ethereum and many other types of crypto, let's say USDC, like I mentioned earlier, that can be sent to anywhere in the world as long as someone has a wallet address without any of the fees that someone like Western Union or TransferWise would take. So, on the topic of remittances, which is usually meaning sending money from one country to another, where let's say the US remits a lot of money from the US to Mexico or the Philippines, that becomes much easier. Another part about financial inclusion is around credit. So let's say a coworker of mine, actually, he's from Nigeria. He mentioned how hard it was to get a loan in Nigeria. Like interest rates there, if you think interest rates here are high, interest rate on a loan in Nigeria can be like 30%.
Oh, they're definitely high here, my friend.
That's right. So um, like
They've been low for a little bit too long, but, that's a story for a different day and a different episode.
yeah. So like in a country like Nigeria, I don't think there's anything like a credit score that exists. So the question is like, how can you provide a loan to people? One way is actually through crypto collateralized loans, where there are some people maybe like they actually have crypto, but they don't have the cash. They can pledge their crypto as collateral, meaning they can use that to guarantee that they'll pay back the loan and actually get access to credit. So that's something that's completely new. And then this can actually be done um, outside of the banking system through something called DeFi, which stands for decentralized finance. There's currently protocols out there. There's one called Compound, there's one called Aave, AAVE, where anyone can essentially act like a bank or be a borrower. So people can put their crypto into that protocol and get interest. So interest rates that are much higher than currently banks are paying, or they can get a loan on their crypto all through these protocols that are decentralized. So no one owns them, and they're really just there for people to either borrow from or lend to.
So let's say I was living in a village in the middle of nowhere, okay? And my village just got running water, we just got electricity, and they handed me a smartphone. You know, I save up what little I have over the course of a year, and I use it to buy a crypto that serves as a DeFi. With this, I would be able to stake up collateral and lend people money.
It's partly there. So first is you need an internet connection. So as long as you have an internet connection,
Let's assume they also installed some internet towers in my little village as well.
yeah, that's right. So if you're able to access these protocols, first is having crypto. So if you're able to buy crypto and have that on your smartphone, you can either put that crypto into DeFi protocol to gain interest on your crypto, or you can take out a loan against your crypto. So basically, you don't need a credit score and you don't need a bank account for these.
That's absolutely amazing because I I really think there's so many areas of our world that are just quite honestly underserved by our banking and financial system. So, Leo, what do you think got you to where you are today in your position? How did your career look like, and how do you get to where you are today?
I feel like there's a lot of different factors, but I would say that community is a big aspect. I feel like in connection, what this means is part of it I think is definitely having the skill set to do the job, but then also having the access to the opportunities. And by this I mean having people who can vouch for you and building up those relationships. The sort of way I view this is that in terms of connection, not by connection as in like having connections, but by like having relationships with people. Like one way I found was interesting, and like one way I feel that let's say networking events are in a sense like pretty fun is talking about similar interests. Um, let's say like I've been able to just go to conferences and events like that and actually like meet friends through there in finding people who have similar interests. So let's say like building relationships with people like that doesn't end after let's say college. Um, Even if you move to a new city, you'll find people with similar interests. And they also don't have to be the same age as you. Like they can also be older or younger. There's a lot you can learn from other people, and everyone can help each other out that way. Forming those connections, I think, really helps and gives you access then to opportunities. So that's something that's definitely helped me quite a bit.
That's fantastic, and I also can vouch to the importance of networking, and I think networking is just something that people should do uh, proactively. You never you, and it's not just when you need a job. I think it's equally important to network so that you can. I view networking as just sharing ideas with people. You have a good idea, you share it with other people. You listen to other people in your field, and you take in the good ideas. And I, I shouldn't have said in your field because this is also limited to people in other fields as well. Because you can definitely draw inspiration from other disciplines and then bring it back to your industry of choice. So, Leo, it truly has been a pleasure having you on air today. Is there any final words that you would like to give to the audience today?
I'd say final words is even though the market is down, a lot of markets, crypto, stock, all of that, at least with crypto, definitely stay positive. There's a lot of work that's being done behind the scenes. So let's say whether that be developers, financial institutions, fintech companies, in building the infrastructure. So that way things will smooth out eventually and that there'll be more adoption and more use cases to come.
Leo, we thank you for being part of that elite group of people shaping the way decentralized finance is working behind the scenes. Once again, thank you so much for joining our show. This is Manny from Heaven's Pantry, signing off.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.